Okay, I wanted to talk about Jehovah's Witnesses and the United Nations and their relationship with it. Why is that significant? Well, first of all, the Jehovah's Witnesses said that the 10 horned wild beasts of Revelation was the United Nations. And that Babylon the Great, which is the harlot of Babylon, what have you, they said that all false religion was Babylon the Great. And the United Nations, which was represented by the wild beast, they said in their many publications, especially the Revelation book, that this harlot was committing spiritual fornication by associating with the United Nations. So the question is, how are they associating? Well, they were associating because they formed what they call NGOs, or non-government organizations. What they failed to disclose was that the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses, also were an NGO. Why is that important? Well, part of the charter of the UN was that they had to sign on to the UN charter, that they believed that the only way for peace and security was through the UN, basically. Now, when they were caught, and they joined in '92, right about the time that they released the Revelation book. They were caught in the early 2000s. So they were about 10 years in the UN. Now, when they were caught, their explanation, now I remember this. I remember them saying this over the platform. Most Jehovah's Witnesses don't remember this. I remember them saying over the platform something like, it's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. I remember, I have an uncle that was a Gilead graduate. He went to Paraguay, and then he went to Russia, and he's still in the headquarters. He still works in the headquarters. I remember my father asking about this, who was an elder, asking directly to my uncle, who's with the branch, and they said, "Oh, it's no big deal. They worked in the they got NGO status because of them working certain books in the library they needed access to." So, I mean, let's just take them at their word for a second. Let's say that's all things on the up and up. Let's say there was a mistake. Let's say it was a spiritual mistake. At the very least, you could say that the governing body of the time committed spiritual fornication. And what are the rules for spiritual fornication? What are the rules for fornication? Well, there has to be a judicial committee. There has to be. That's the rules of Jehovah's Witnesses. So the governing body should have had, at the time, to keep themselves spiritually clean. They would have had to have a judicial committee. And the results of that, obviously, they would have to find out whether or not they were innocent or pure-hearted or whatever they call it. Now, I don't believe any of this, but I'm just using their analogy, their rules, as their standard of how to understand what should have happened and their relationship with the UN. So because they committed spiritual fornication, are they the faithful and discreet slave? And the simple answer is no. Being faithful, when you commit, being faithful to your wife is not committing fornication, having sex outside of your marriage. They did that. If they are the bride of Christ, they committed spiritual fornication. Those people should be disfellowshipped at a time period until they repented. They're simply just choosing not to on their rules alone. Now, first of all, I want to say that the Jehovah's Witness, the reason why they even hold any power is because of the prophecy of 607 BCE, which is not correct. It's not historically correct. It's not biblically correct. It's just not correct. And they point to 1914, which was World War II, and if you really look at the history, they're not even close to being the same thing. So I recommend jwfacts.com. That's a good website. It will give more explanation on that if you want to do some more research. Also, the expression faithful and discreet slave in the Bible, that was an illustration about Jehovah's, it was an illustration about being faithful to God. There was also 10 virgins, the wicked slave. They don't give an explanation of all those things. It was really just about faithfulness. It's a random scripture about Jehovah's, or about God's being faithful to God and really using what you have to teach others. But it had nothing to do with specifically them being chosen. So I just wanted to just discuss that for a second. So even on the very legitimacy, like even if you believe in 100% Jehovah's Witnesses, the question I have, why wasn't there not a judicial committee for the governing body at the time? Obviously the new members, I don't need to have a judicial committee. They weren't involved with it. But the old members that were need to have one. And until then, how honestly could you possibly believe in any of them? They're no longer faithful. So, just some thoughts. Please continue to read, continue the Bible, continue to pray, and you'll find some answers. And I'll also be there for help. Please like and subscribe. Have a great day.